Tonight I'd like to tell a story about my sister Lita, who died by suicide on June 20th, 2010. We grew up telling stories. Storytelling is a huge part of Latin American culture, and it was how we learned about the world. It was how we learned about what part of the forest to play in or how to swim in the ocean. Stories were always a tablecloth upon which little nuggets of guidance were dropped. Sometimes they were words of warning, sometimes they were words of encouragement, and sometimes ways of remembering. So tonight the story I'll tell is a way of remembering my sister in the hopes that by saying her name, by mentioning her, she will be kept alive by story. My sister was my partner in crime. She was my accomplice growing up in the wild nature of Costa Rica. Whether it was digging around in low tide by the ocean or climbing trees for mangoes, she was somebody who was always by my side, and also somebody who I lost way too early. The language of loss is intriguing to me because even as I say that I lost her, that doesn't seem like an accurate description of what happened. I didn't lose her. I mean, she's right here. Saying that I lost her feels like I was somehow careless and misplaced her, but I didn't lose her. But I think that we have such discomfort around death that we have to find ways to soften the blow and the language around it. So sometimes saying that I lost her sounds better than she's dead. And I'm always intrigued by how the mind does somersaults to protect itself. Lita Maria del Carmen Tresierra was born in 1977. We grew up in the 80s and 90s at a time when mental health awareness was not what it is today, despite the fact that our mom was a psychologist and my sister struggled from a very young age. My sister was said to be stubborn and she was fiery. She had a strong temper, but nobody really talked about how she would lash out verbally and physically, how she would hurt herself, hit her head on the floor when she was frustrated. And things were normalized, like her chasing me around the house with a kitchen knife, and I would have to hide and wait it out. A lot of my sister's childhood was spent managing her or tiptoeing around her, and a lot of that management fell on me as her older sibling. I was 4 years older. My dad was in and out of the picture when we were growing up. Our parents immigrated to Canada in the early 70s, and my sister and I were born here, and at that time my dad was offered a job at Concordia as a professor. But when my mom had to move to a warmer climate because of illness, my dad stayed here and he would visit us sporadically in Costa Rica. So in Costa Rica, we grew up in a matriarchal household with my grandmother and my mom and my aunt and myself and my sister and all the ladies who worked with us in our home. And my mom was sick when we were growing up. My mom was sick physically, but I think she also struggled mentally. She felt a lot of shame, a lot of deep shame about being a single mom in a culture where that was not acceptable. All right. My sister and I were very close, but I was often angry with her for stressing out my mom, especially since she was sick. I would always think that she was selfish, and I would tell her so. When I got the opportunity to come back to Canada to go to university, I snatched it up. And I told my mom at that point that I thought that Lita was really selfish and that she needed to do something about it. And I know that my mom was really brokenhearted about me leaving and about me saying this to her. But I felt I needed to take space. I needed to take space from my sister and from the situation. I needed a break. And at that time, my sister was a teenager, and she was really partying hard and doing a lot of recreational drugs, and I know my mom needed support, and I know that she was really worried, but I left anyway. My time in Canada was magical. When I came here, I felt an immediate sense of belonging, and I felt like, oh my God, finally my life is starting. I was learning theater, I was making new friends. I really felt like I could finally sink into a life of my own. And then in 1996, 2 years into my bachelor's degree, and I was 22 years old, our mom died suddenly from complications of lupus. And I had to return to Costa Rica at that time to manage that event. And from that moment, I feel like my sister never quite recovered from the death and absence of our mom. Time passed, and Lita also came to Canada, my sister, to go to school. And she was with me. We were connected, and she was with me for the birth of my daughter, Elena, as a single mom. And she was always by my side, Auntie Lita. And I could still see that she struggled. And at that time, I encouraged her often to seek support. I would find resources for her, but I could never force her to do that, even though I felt that it was really important. And she had also a relationship with a wonderful man at the time who was super supportive, but that ended. And he also expressed concern about her outbursts and just the way she was in general. Years later, I met a lovely man, and we had another child, a son, and we got married. And my sister was still by my side during that time, super supportive, and helping me with the kids, always with me. But she was really, really struggling at this time. I could feel that she was overwhelmed, that her management of the world just wasn't the same. And I felt that she was slipping into a dark place. She became very aggressive. She was paranoid. She would feel that sometimes waiters were looking at her weirdly, and she became quite volatile. And because I had 2 young children, and I just, I had a lot to manage at the time, I kind of pulled back a little bit from her. And after that, she went into a deep depression. It's a funny thing, loss. I feel like it's a shapeshifter. Sometimes it shows up as rage. Other times it shows up as raw grief. There are times when I drive by her apartment on St. Joseph, and I can see her sitting on the stoop with her wild hair and her smile and her flip-flops, and all the air just gets sucked out of my lungs, and I just have to pull over and grip the steering wheel and just breathe through that painful moment. And other times, it shape-shifts again, and I'm okay. It's kind of like taking a mouthful of soup, and this is how I see it every day. The soup has all the perfect ingredients. It has guilt and regret. It has love and sunshine and memories and laughter, and it also has grief and rage, and it's all mixed in. And when you reach in and you take a bite, you don't know what's going to be in that bite that day. You just don't know. And you just have to pray that you can digest it at that specific moment. One thing that has been helpful to me, and maybe this is also part of like some sort of perimenopausal reckoning that I'm going through, is to bring grief close to me. Bringing grief close to me has been instrumental, I think, in navigating the pain of this loss. Being of both cultures, Canadian and Latin American, I see how both cultures experience and live grief in a different way. In Canada here, I find we're a little bit scared of grief. We don't really like plunge in, and it's a much more individualistic approach, like get therapy, and there's kind of a feeling like you have to do it right in some sort of way. In Latin American culture, we grieve together. There's ritual, we do a lot of ritual, there's community support that you have, and it's quite a much more open approach. But both have been really useful to me. Both approaches have really been nourishing to me in the sense that they've invited a lot of deep inquiry for myself. There are moments when I hear a song that Lita and I used to sing together, or I drive by a cafe where we used to sit. There are many articles of clothing of hers that I still wear, that my daughter wears. And in these moments, I appreciate the messiness of grief. It's not neat and tidy. There's no way to do it right. I appreciate working through those moments in real time because I feel that grief it's all the love that's trapped in me for my sister. And I heard this on an Anderson Cooper podcast, actually, on grief, and it really resonated with me. By allowing the waves of it to pull me under sometimes, I'm also able to appreciate the lightness of thinking of her, how she was in the world, her smile, her exuberance, the way she was so compassionate with everyone and everything. And I'm able to hold those two things together. They coexist. And there are so many corners in Montreal where we lived and we laughed. My sister and I laughed a lot together. And it seems like an act of bravery to go on despite her absence. It doesn't really seem courageous, although many people always, when she passed away, would come up to me and say, oh my gosh, you're so courageous to go through this. And I never felt it was courageous. I didn't want this. I didn't choose this. It wasn't a courageous thing. Sure, it's brave, but you have to be brave to survive a thing. You have to be brave to just go on. Courage, I find for myself at least, is a much more, it's a much more intentional thing. All of us here in this room have endured loss. We have all had to be brave at one moment or another. And that's kind of the takeaway for me, that we have this one unifying thing, this one experience that can bring us together. And sure, it can make us hard. Yeah, it can also make us soft. It can make us push away, but it can also make us reach for each other. I have had the privilege of being a doula, as was mentioned before, for 15 years. And that means that I accompany families and women through the process of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And amazingly, birth, not death, has been my greatest teacher. Through all the births that I've supported, every unique single little birth that I've supported, there are moments of intense, raw contractions. And then there are moments of just relaxed and resourcing space and expansions. And that's how birth works. We need both things. We need the contraction and we need the expansion in order to be born, in order to move into a different place. So sometimes when I feel that pain in my heart, that grief that comes flooding in, and I feel like when I was in the throes of labor myself and all my clients, that I may actually die. Like sometimes you feel I may die. I may actually not make it through this moment. I may not make it through this flashback, through this memory. I remember that soon and mercifully the contraction will stop and I will be granted a moment of grace to just rest, resource myself, and prepare for what's next. Thank you.